Christian traditions as well, but I know it's true of the Catholics. Well, hello, Heidi.
Good evening, everyone. How are you, Shankara?
I'm quite well, dear, and you?
I'm well, too. Thank you.
Good, good, good. Well, we're off and running with Rabia's poem, Jealous of a Pond.
Is that where we are? What page is that? Do you know?
19, page 19.
Thank you.
19.
Got it. Thanks.
Jealous of a Pond. When God said, "My hands are yours," I saw that I could heal any creature in this world. I saw that the divine beauty in each heart is the root of all time and space. I was once a sleeping ocean, and in a dream became jealous of a pond. A penny can be eyed in the street, and a war break out over it amongst the poor. Until we know that God lives in us, and we can see him there. Until we know that God lives in us, and we can see him there, a great poverty we suffer. Jealous of a pond. Page 19, Swayam.
Thank you.
This is certainly a remarkable poem. Hello, Michele. Namaste, dear. When God said, "My hands are yours," I saw that I could heal any creature in this world. I saw that the divine beauty in each heart is the root of all time and space. I was once a sleeping ocean, and in a dream became jealous of a pond. A penny can be eyed in the street, and a war break out over it amongst the poor. Until we know that God lives in us, until we know that God lives in us and we can see him there, a great poverty we suffer.
Well, I'll jump in. This poem I have come back to many times lately. I really have pretty much committed to constant memory. I was once a sleeping ocean, and in a dream became jealous of a pond, because I think once you are fully aware that you are the sleeping ocean, there's a certain frustration that comes with your continual jealousy over ponds. So this is, as Brother Shankara says, quote, "your damned impatience" to me very often. But that seems to really sum up a lot of the spiritual frustration I feel, is knowing one thing and feeling another. I'm just sharing it, you know.
Justine, that is so right on the money. Hello, June.
Hello.
So good to see you, dear.
Oh, we had a little trouble.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're on page 19.
Oh, okay.
So Justine, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. We have a conviction of one thing, and yet our daily experience is something else. So we keep having a war with ourselves over that penny in the street. But you know, I think the real key to this poem is I saw that divine beauty in each heart is the root of all time and space. In other words, all our experience of duality is rooted in our very own hearts. The divine beauty in our hearts is the root of this experience of time and space. And so slowly and slowly, we come to the conclusion that God lives in us and we can see him there.
And were you finished? I was
Yeah,
didn't interrupt.
absolutely, yeah.
The penny in the street is the shiny thing that we think
Mm-hmm.
is valuable, and it's external and it's out there in the street, and we're going to dive in and fight over it when the real shiny thing is inside. Yeah.
And it's amazing how this poem is very like, in some of its ways, one of Saint Teresa of Avila's poems that I was reading just this morning. Even to the sleeping ocean. The same metaphors in her poem. Anything else from anyone about this one? Thanks, Cindy. That was absolutely right. That shiny thing outside.
What got me was the first sentence where Brother Shankar, she said, when God said, "My hands are yours," I saw that I could heal any creature in this world. So she had to have seen the divinity in everything, every creature, everything that's living at that point.
Yes, and the idea that my hands are yours. In other words, I am the one who is doing through your hands. That's why there can be a healing of any creature in the world. My hands are yours. Right on, Michaela. Yeah, that's just it. Anything else?
I just realized that she's saying I was once a sleeping ocean, and in a dream, had a dream in which I became jealous of a pond. I kept reading, or that kept coming to me as if she dreamed she was a sleeping ocean. But she was once a sleeping ocean.
Yeah. And then dreamed.
And dreamed, yeah. Anyway, that's...
Well, that's why I say this sleeping ocean, this still ocean, is exactly the same metaphor with which Saint Teresa of Avila starts her poem that I was reading this morning. Anybody else? Shall we go on?
Well, in my defense, there are so many younger and prettier ponds out there. So,
why do you need to defend yourself? But
I'm just joking. I'm sorry. I just wanted to add some.
yeah, let's levitate it up. You're right. A little levity is good.
What are you doing? Mozzie's rearranging the furniture here.
Uh-huh. So, Heidi, would you like to read the next poem? I hope God thinks like that.
Forgot I muted. My phone rang, so
Right.
anyway. I hope God thinks like that. There is a dog I sometimes take for a walk and turn loose in a field. When I can't give her that freedom, I feel in debt. I hope God thinks like that and is keeping track of all the bliss he owes me.
Speaking of levity, isn't
Yeah,
that,
I can read it again.
please?
I hope God thinks like that. There is a dog I sometimes take for a walk and turn loose in a field. When I can't give her that freedom, I feel in debt. I hope God thinks like that and is keeping track of all the bliss he owes me.
So the metaphor of the dog loose in the field. Happy dog. Happy dog.
Happy dog.
Who wrote that, Heidi?
Yes?
What did you say, June? I'm sorry, we didn't hear you clearly.
Who wrote that poem?
That's Rabia.
Okay.
We're still in the Rabia section.
Okay.
She speaks, plainly. Her poems aren't complicated metaphorically, usually.
And I mean, on a purely, again, a simple level, I mean, I have owned animals most of my life, and I do feel bad when I can't give them like the love and attention that they deserve. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I do feel bad, like I owe them a debt. Like, okay, they've got all this time in a jar or a bottle that I owe them.
There's a beautiful, beautiful poem. It's not in this book, of course, but it's by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and it's called "When Dogs Run Free." It's about when civilization breaks down, and we don't have to keep our dogs within fences and on leashes and on chains and all that. It's a beautiful poem, When Dogs Run Free.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
Lawrence Ferlinghetti.
When civilization breaks down, you mean like now?
Well, certainly that seems to be what's happening. We'll see what actually happens, but certainly civilization seems to be crumbling at the edges. We'll see how far into the center it gets.
And then what do you make of the last part of the poem? I mean, I love how she says, I hope God thinks like that, like she's thinking, and I keeping track of all the bliss he owes me,
We're like that dog that isn't allowed to run free so much of the time. And so, she's saying, God's in my debt the way I feel in debt to that dog. And I hope he acknowledges it. In other places, she says he does, not directly, but she definitely says that he does acknowledge everything. And certainly the other saints do. Anything else from anyone?
I suppose the electronic fence is sort of like the free will we think we have. We take off and then we get zapped, and then remember that it's really not totally our free will and that it's God.
What do you mean by being zapped, dear? That's an interesting term.
Well, I don't know, but I presume that if the dogs cross the fence, they get some sense of, you know, a zap that keeps them back.
Electronic fence, right.
Oh, right, an electronic fence. Yeah. Well, we definitely have that electronic fence, don't we? But it's inside of us. We're the ones who keep ourselves bound up. Yep.
Brother Shankar,
Yes, dear.
I am thinking at the time that she was going through so much of pain in her life, and that maybe she's putting it in words like, I hope God thinks like that too, and in this keeping track of all the bliss he owes me, because she was not liberated. She was going through the pain. Maybe that was the time she wrote it. I was just thinking in my mind, Rabia went through so much of painful experiences, being abused.
We just don't know when she wrote this poem.
Right, I was thinking could be part of that pain. She's putting it, God owes me the liberation.
Yes, well, definitely she was a dog restrained when she was in that house of prostitution where she was forced to be all those years. So,
I just thought of that. It just
yeah. So, I think that last line is, no, that's, you know, she has, the corners of Rabia's mouth are turned up, you know. She is not, she's smiling a great deal of the time. And so I just think that's a wry remark. You know, there's a deep meaning to it. You're probably very right, Haima, but it also, you know,
some humor in it.
I think she's just smiling and saying, you know.
But I think too, somebody had mentioned about, you know, reading the poems in context to the different, you know, authors or poets. And I try to keep that in mind when I am reading these poems, especially her, what she, all the hardships, and like we talked about a few nights back, a few weeks ago, you know, just the remarkable and incredible suffering she endured, you know.
Yes.
So I try to keep that in the forefront of my mind when, particularly, you know, that we're focusing on her right now. But that's a good point that was made about, you know, what might be happening in her life at that time. So
Yeah, I think Haima may be onto something.
When you said, Shankar, when you said about the dog, you know, happy dog,
Mm-hmm.
dog, and yes, cat isn't happy, but um, the dog is happy because it's free,
Yes.
because she actually uses that word freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And
When I can't give him that freedom.
right,
I
and
feel
you
in
know,
her neck.
God can't give us that freedom while we're still embodied, just like we can't let the dog loose all the time because there have to be limitations.
There are indeed limitations, and that's why she says the limitations come from within us. It's the time, and the whole business of time and space comes from within us. Anybody else?
Brother Shankara, I have to agree with Haima, because when I was looking over it, where she said on the end is keeping track of all the bliss he owes me. I mean, the higher thought, that would go towards karma dharma, and on the thought process of that, but there's a higher level than that where God doesn't owe you anything, because the reality is that nothing ever happened,
Yeah.
that you be separated from your father. It's kind of like a bad dream.
Right.
So I don't know if
I
on
was a
some level,
sleeping ocean, and
yeah, the one before.
right.
I
Well
was a
observed.
sleeping in a dream and became jealous of a pond. So the only way the ocean could, and that one too, could be jealous of the pond is it's not in oneness, it's not in contentment, because jealousy is
Oh yeah.
still at a level. So I agree with Jaime
Good.
on this.
Excellent. Well, that's
But
as has been said a number of times. There are no right answers when reading poems. There's just what arises in us out of having read it. I mean, there is in literary criticism something called the intentional fallacy, where we think we know what the author's intention is.
But like you said before, it's all a process, and it's a gradual process. So that was part of her gradual process, and just the fact that she was watching the dog and the freedom was in her own desire was to be free.
Yes. Well, you know, for all of us who have owned dogs, we've experienced that of being able to let a dog run free, and then the other experience of having to keep it on a leash or pinned up. It's painful to have to keep a dog pinned up,
Or a cat.
or a cat. Michaela, you want to read the next one? It acts like love.
Sure. It acts like love. It acts like love, music. It reaches toward the face, touches it, and tries to let you know his promise that all will be okay. It acts like love, music, and tells the feet, you do not have to be so burdened. The body is covered with wounds.
My
This-
body,
My
my
body, sorry, my body is covered with wounds, this world made, but I still long to kiss him, even when God said, could you also kiss the hand that caused each scar? For you will not find me until you do. It does that, music helps us to forgive.
Please read it again, dear.
The whole poem?
Uh-huh.
Okay. It acts like love. It acts like love, music. It reaches toward the face, touches it, and tries to let you know his promise that all will be okay. It acts like love, music, and tells the feet, you do not have to be so burdened. The body is covered with wounds. This world,
It's my body.
I don't want reading the, sorry. My body is covered with wounds, this world made. But I still long to kiss him, even when God said, could you also kiss the hand that caused each scar? For you will not find me until you do. It does that, music helps us to forgive.
Thank you, Michaela. Sorry to have to correct you, but that is such a key line. I didn't want it to be misread for those of us who are not able to follow along, like June, who aren't necessarily reading it. So this, I think, is perhaps the most powerful of Rabia's poems in this collection. Because it touches on just exactly what Jaime was talking about. My body is covered with wounds this world made, but I still long to kiss him. Even when God said, could you also kiss the hand that caused each scar? for you will not find me until you do. Now, for each of us, that is one heck of a lesson, because we're all scarred. Hafiz says in one of his poems that he was told by his teacher, it's easy to kiss each of those hands. All you have to do is remember, they're what brought me to you. They're what brought you to me. It was all of those painful experiences is what brought you to me. So this is, I think, such a strong poem. And then, of course, it praises music. And I think most of you have heard me say, Swami Vivekananda, the saint that brought our teachings here to the United States, said, music is the highest form of art. And for those who understand it, the highest form of worship.
And I like too that, you know, the first stanza there at the end, this promise that all will be okay. I think we all can relate over the years to a certain song or a melody, whether it's, you know, a romantic thing or a song that's gotten you through a tough patch in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you just relate to it, and that everything is going to be okay, you know. And I think it's the universal language too.
Yes.
You know, you don't even have to understand the words, you know, just the melody, you know, if it's in a different language than yours.
Exactly.
I just think it's very healing, and I love the, you know, you do not have to be so burdened, you know, like let your feet move, you know.
Right.
And there's,
You
know,
don't have to be so weighed down.
right. And it's true, you know, you just.
And I love, excuse me, Heidi, please go ahead. Well, I just love the way it doesn't say it does it, but it reaches toward the face, touches it, and tries to let you know his promise that all will be okay. So once again, we are able to receive or not receive according to our capacity.
Yeah, it's a beautiful poem. Like you say, it's very profound. There's a lot here.
Anything else from anyone?
Also, she never lost faith in God, regardless of the pain that she was enduring every time. You know, her expression of my body is covered with wounds this world made. So she had been going through so many painful experiences, but she never lost faith in God. That's one of the most powerful.
You're right, Haima, and that is actually mentioned in her biography.
Yeah.
That little biography at the beginning, that even when she was forced into that life,
yeah,
she never lost faith in God.
In her faith in God. So amazing. So inspiring too.
So this is a poem that kind of struck me on a couple different levels. I mean, first of all, could you also kiss the hand that caused each scar, and my body is covered with wounds this world made. I mean, I don't want to go into detail, but I've had my share of trauma, and it's not a past tense thing. You know, it continues to resonate in the body long after the event. And so when she's writing, I don't get the sense that this is completely over for her. She's still dealing with the pain. That's why God owes her the bliss, not merely because the pain she suffered, but because the resonance that suffered is created in her body. The other thing that strikes me about this poem is, well, for one thing, I'm a really big music fan. And I have a massive collection of vinyl and bootlegs and CDs and, music videos. And I'm watching something that isn't terribly spiritual last week. And I'm thinking to myself, is this worthy of my time? And then it occurred to me, well, this is whatever these men were in life, they are radiantly divine when they are performing their music. Because performing of music, even secular music, is just an expression of divine creativity. And so it's just inherently valuable for what it is. And the other thing that comes to mind, the last thing, is that I grew up in a very somewhat restrictive fundamentalist Christian background. And, we weren't even allowed to listen to rock and roll, all we heard was country music in the house, which took me a long time to learn to love again. But, it was the Beatles that drugged me out of that programming. It was the Beatles that caused me to be open to Eastern spirituality. And it was the Beatles that caused me to say, I don't want to be in this fundamentalist, dogmatic, Christian, suburban, dead-eyed life. They kind of sparked in me the desire to evolve and to become self-determined. And in a way, they were God to me when I had no God. They were what God was speaking to me directly through them. And
Amen.
so I see that in here too. And when I listen, even today, and I'm just going to be honest, if I play Sgt. Pepper, which I did this morning, that's God's music to me just as much as the Carter family.
Oh, absolutely, dear.
So
Absolutely.
anyway, I just wanted to share those three little things that all came out of this poem for me.
Well, yes. Thank you. And I think the last words of the poem, music helps us to forgive. As you said earlier, Justine, it's not over for her. It's never over for us as long as we're embodied. That's the peculiarity. We may become an illumined soul, and yet, as many of the illumined souls have said, it's not over. There's still all the stuff that comes with being in this seemingly separated state.
I don't think abuse will ever be forgotten, Brother Shankara, right? And forgiveness probably makes people move forward in life. Yeah.
Well, it's the only thing, as she points out.
Exactly. She said it really clear.
Could you also kiss the hand that caused each scar? For you will not find me until you do. And she says this is what she was told by God directly, because she came to that point where she could hear the voice of God. But that didn't mean that everything was over. Anything else from anyone on this poem?
Well, it brought to mind for me a scene from a movie that's one of my favorite movies, and maybe my favorite scene from any movie of all time. It was Shawshank Redemption, for anyone who saw that, and it's this scene where this one prisoner locks himself in the warden's office. This is back in the 50s, 40s, 60s, I can't remember. Anyway, around that time. And he puts over the loudspeaker system this opera. It was, I think it was Mozart. I think it was two women singing a piece that was just, not only is the song beautiful, but the particular performance of it was just ethereal. And he's broadcasting it out all over the prison. And these men, many of whom are lifers, in this gray place, are just, they're all just like transported in that moment. And it is like love. You know, what else can do that?
Redemption. Yes.
I just,
I agree, Cindy.
it's really amazing. And
That scene just brings you to tears.
mhm,
It is so beautiful.
yeah. And the, I forget his name, but the character that Morgan Freeman played,
Mhm.
he's also the narrator, and he's like, uh, I don't know what those Italian women were singing about that day, and I don't want to know. It was just, I mean, but he went on to wax ecstatic about the effect that it had on him and all these other men. Just for this moment, it took them to another place. It freed them,
It
which is another
reaches
thing.
toward the face, touches it, and tries to let you know his promise that all will be okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Anything else from anybody on this one? Thank you, Cindy. Tells the feet, you do not have to be so burdened. You don't have to be so weighed down.
Do you think it's possible that listening to music can be part of your sadhana? I mean, even
Oh,
music that's not of a
absolutely.
spiritual nature, you know?
Absolutely, dear. As you pointed out, it was for you and it was for me too. I mean, Sergeant Pepper, when that album came out, I remember the day we lived in Grass Valley, California. No, Nevada City, California. And that album came out. And it was brought home and we played it. And we were all transported, all four of us who lived together. My brother-in-law at the time, my sister, my wife, and myself. We were just transported. I can still remember the opening bars of that. Yes, it can be part of your sadhana. And of course, it was very much a part of Sri Ramakrishna's sadhana. He was constantly singing bhajans and singing songs and listening to others sing and going into ecstatic states.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Yeah, and I don't have a memory as good as many of the others here, but there's a portion in Gospel where Sri Ramakrishna does talk about all art as being a way to connect, but particularly music.
Yes.
Then he bursts into this song, and I don't know by which poet, but it's one of those Sanskrit songs, I think, that the names, there's a different raga or melody for 7 different things. I don't recall if it's moods or the bhavas or something, but that even the English translation of it was so transporting. And I was trying to, as you were discussing, go through the index, but I cannot remember that particular page or that song. But it was one of those that, again, the music, the connection of music was so intense.
Well, yes, indeed. And music and song, singing it himself and also other people singing it in his presence, would often put Sri Ramakrishna in an ecstatic state. And I remember very hazily the song that you're talking about too. But so that's okay. We've still got 20 minutes. Who'd like to read? Liam, would you like to read the poem, The Moon Was Once a Moth?
Sure, I'll read it. Let me just. Okay. The moon was once a moth. The moon was once a moth who ran to her lover. They embraced, and she ultimately passed away with such a smile everywhere on her body. Over a period of time, her wings fell to the earth and sanctified the meadows. Angels came and buried the limbs that touched his mouth. The moon was once a moth who ran to God. They entwined. Now, just her luminous soul remains as we gaze at it at night.
Okay, please read it again.
The moon was once a moth. The moon was once a moth who ran to her lover. They embraced, and she ultimately passed away with such a smile everywhere on her body. Over a period of time, her wings fell to the earth and sanctified the meadows. Angels came and buried the limbs that touched his mouth. The moon was once a moth who ran to God. They entwined. Now, just her luminous soul remains, and we gaze at it at night.
And she ultimately passed away with such a smile everywhere on her body. What a beautiful, beautiful line.
I was just envisioning that, Shankar, when you just read that. That
Good.
line.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Excellent.
That is beautiful, isn't it?
Oh, it's gorgeous. And this is a myth that exists in many cultures throughout the world, that something fell from the moon at one time and sanctified the earth. And then here it says the angels came and buried the limbs that had touched his mouth. It makes such a difference when we see everything in terms of a divine context. Everything is happening within that divine context. It transforms everything. Anybody else have anything about this one?
So it's the moth and the moon, not the man in the moon.
Yes.
Mhm.
And she says at the end, it's her luminous soul that we see, that's all that remains.
Mhm.
Does everyone know why the moon shines so brightly? Can anyone tell us?
But it's reflecting the sunlight, right? Isn't that what?
Yes, but why does it reflect it so brightly? I happen to know because I have an interest in finding out about such things. The reason being that all the meteorite impacts that have hit the moon have left all of these crystals. I almost remembered their name. They have a particular name. The moon is covered with gray dust. And if it were just that gray dust, it would not shine the way it does. On top of the gray dust are these tiny crystals, and they are what reflects the sunlight and why the moon shines so brightly.
It's lunar glitter.
It's lunar glitter, yes.
And those tiny crystals are from the meteorites that have pieces of the meteorites that have impacted.
Well, when a meteorite impacts on the moon, there's this big explosion, and everything gets turned into lots gets turned into a gas, some gets turned into a liquid, and as it cools, some of it is this silica and other things that shine, things that make diamonds, carbon. And because the pressure is so intense, it turns these materials into these small but unbelievably innumerable crystals that cover the surface of the moon. So the moon would, if it were just the gray dust, the moon would not be what we see. So there's something magical about the fact that the moon has these crystalline little crystals covering its entire surface above the dust.
And right before we started, I looked out my window and the moon was big, bold, and bright.
Oh, beautiful.
Not quite full. Thursday will be a full moon. Called a hunter's moon will be Thursday.
That's right.
Hunter's moon, but it's clouded up right now, but we should be able to see it pretty good in the next couple nights. I think it's going to be clear.
Beautiful. Well, anything else about this particular poem? There are so many beautiful myths about the moon and the relationship with the moon, between the moon and the sun, and the moon and God, various forms of God. And the moon being herself a form of goddess. She ultimately passed away with such a smile everywhere on her body. And when her wings fell to the earth, they sanctified the meadows. Angels came and buried the limbs that touched his mouth. Now just her luminous soul remains, and we gaze at it at night. We've got time for the next one. Who'd like to read the next one? Ima, would you like to read it?
Sure.
It's called A Vase.
Yes, a vase. I am always holding a priceless vase in my hands. If you asked me about the deeper truths of the path and I told you the answers, it would be like handing sacred relics to you. But most have their hands tied behind their back. That is, Most are not free of events their eyes have seen, and their ears have heard, and their bodies have felt. Most cannot focus their abilities in the present and might drop what I said. So I will wait. I don't mind waiting until your love for all makes luminous the now.
Would you read it again, please?
A vase. I am always holding a priceless vase in my hands. If you asked me about the deeper truths of the path and I told you the answers, it would be like handing sacred relics to you. But most have their hands tied behind their back. That is, most are not free of events their eyes have seen and their ears have heard and their bodies have felt. Most cannot focus their abilities in the present and might drop what I said. So I will wait. I don't mind waiting until your love for all makes luminous the now. It's very nice.
Most are not free of most are not free of the events. Most are not free of events their eyes have seen, and their ears have heard, and their bodies have felt.
That's right.
So when we're able to love all of that, rather than doing what we normally do with it, which is projections and memories and reveries. Anybody else? How do we get our hands untied from behind our back? How do we do that? She tells us in the poem.
Very difficult, isn't it? Extremely hard.
Well, she says it, doesn't she say it after that? That is, most are not free of events their eyes have seen, and their ears have heard, and their bodies have felt. So if you could be free of those things, you could unleash your hands.
Right.
Yeah, perhaps.
You're absolutely right, Heidi. Most cannot focus their abilities in the present and might drop what I said, that priceless vase. So I wait. I don't mind waiting until your love for all. That's the key. Our love for all, regardless. And that's what's so damned hard. We want to hold something back. Well, I'll love all this, but not that.
It's conditional.
Yeah.
And two, the patience. I don't mind waiting until your love for all makes luminous for now. I mean, the patience there is just,
Yeah, they'll wait for all eternity.
when sometimes we don't even have the patience, you know, to do little things, you know.
Over and over in this book, the saints tell us we have to love everything, everything, without exception. That's so difficult. Anybody else have anything about this one? Thank you, Heidi.
Brother, this is Katrina. How do you do that? How do you have a love for all? Because you see things and they get to you. How do you have a love for all?
Well, what the saints in this book tell us is that when we come to understand that everything without exception comes from the divine,
Okay.
and is the will of the divine, then our love for the divine can allow us to embrace all of it. But that's not what we were trained to do as children, was it? By training, I mean the example that those around us, our parents and others, set for us. No, they held grudges. They nursed pain. They did not see everything as coming from God, even though their scriptures, the scriptures of every tradition, tell us. I just read something yesterday from the Baal Shem Tov, a great 17th and 18th century Jewish saint. Today is Yom Kippur. And he said that when the Torah says, I am and do everything, I am everything in the universe, everything that you experience, that is to be taken literally. So when we're able to do that, each of these saints tells us that in their own way. We'll find it in each of the saints as we go on through. That when we embrace everything as coming from the divine and being the will of the divine, and so by embrace I mean put our arms and hearts around it, then we can hear the music that helps us to forgive.
Okay.
Hey, you, don't make it bad. Take a sad song and make it better. Remember to let her into your heart. Speaking of the Beatles, as we were earlier. And make it better, better, better.
Okay, thank you.
Most cannot focus their abilities in the present and might drop what I said. So I'll wait. I don't mind waiting until your love for all makes luminous the now.
The thing is, once the love for all comes and makes luminous the now, she won't need to say anything.
Well said, dear. But we'll be able to better hear what she did say.
Right.
Well, it's 9:01. Is there anything else from anyone?
Yeah, I just, one thing came to mind reading this, and it was something I think you might have said it either yesterday or on Saturday about how something along the lines of we don't really know, why things happen, right? Or something along the lines of that. Is that
Yes.
I believe you said it. And
Yes, we don't understand karma. We don't understand why things happen.
yes, and that came up for me as I was reading this poem, in particular about focusing on the present, and how she talks about we're not free from the events that our eyes have seen and our ears have heard and our bodies have felt. It's because I feel like there's this societal, not just on a national, but just kind of a human obsession of trying to understand why everything happened, right? It's like, why, just like in the news, it's like, why, where, why did this, virus come from? Or why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why did this such and such lose the election? And there's this such an obsession of trying to quantify this kind of ineffable why, right? Which is kind of it's basically just like people will eventually kind of disagree on whatever reason something happened instead of just seeing what's really there. But this kind of obsession with trying to have, find this why of something that happened in the past is just kind of really, and like you said, we can never really, if we're really honest with ourselves, we really can't know that, right? I mean, there's just so much more than we could process with the senses that, we could probably come up with a, caveman drawing level explanation of things, which is probably what we rely on, right? If you look at the news, I mean, that's what it is, right? It's like, why did the stock market crash? I don't know, probably this, and that. And sure, I mean, that probably, I guess is sufficient to move on to the next thing. But if you really think about it, there's just so many other factors, right? That it's just not possible to really quantify. And I just, I don't know. That's just what came to my mind when I'm, as I'm seeing this is, when I'm, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening for me? Well, and it's when I'm in that type of analysis or hyper analysis, that's what really prevents me from, it's like my hands are behind my back because I can't see what's in front of me.
And it is our habit of being marrying our awareness to our left mind. Our left mind wants to explain things. That's its job. Now, it's a servant. It's not the master, but it acts like the master. And so Sri Ramakrishna says, everybody thinks their watch tells the right time. So this is why we have disagreements, because we have these opinions. They're just the activities of our left mind. Explanation. And if you want to read, it's so beautifully expressed. If you want to read what a neuroanatomist has to say about the left mind and how it works and what a treachery it produces in us, read Jill Bolte Taylor's My Stroke of Insight. It is absolutely And if anybody wants that book, I'll send you a PDF of it. Just send me an email. I'll send you a PDF of it. It is brilliant in how she shows, because her left mind was taken completely offline by a truly massive stroke, my stroke of insight, which left her with her right mind personality. And so slowly and slowly, over 8 years, she recovered her left mind capabilities, but was able to discriminate between that which was treacherous and that which was useful. And I mean the word treacherous. That's how she expresses it. So if anybody would like to have a copy of that, just send me an email and I'll send you a PDF of it. Or you can buy the book. You can buy the Kindle edition, or you can buy the print edition. It's very inexpensive. You can get it online very inexpensively. It's a thin book. It's not a long read. But it just explains what our left mind does. And you just said it so well, Liam. You know, and so we chase our tails with this left mind experience of trying to explain everything and remembering and projecting. And we go back and forth between memory and reverie and projection. It's one of the reasons. Yes, please. Who was that?
Shankar, can you tell us the title again?
Yes, My Stroke of Insight.
Stroke.
When I was in the car one time riding with my sister, we were driving from Los Angeles to Berkeley, and I had recently read that book and was so excited about it. I told her, "Oh, Janice, you have to read this book. You have to read this book, My Stroke of Insight." And she heard me say, Maestro of Insight. And she could not figure out what in the world I was talking about. So that's still a joke between us.
That's a great little story.
It is, isn't it wonderful? Maestro of Insight. I have this, I don't do it, so it's kind of a racket I'm running with myself, but I keep thinking I'll have a puppet maker make a Maestro of Insight doll and send it to Jill Bolte Taylor.
Heidi Carpenter, local puppet maker, it's extraordinaire. She would love to do it. You really should do it.
Well, then we need to get together with her.
Yeah.
There you go. See?
Because I'm sure that Jill Bolte Taylor would just absolutely love the story and the doll. She's a great artist herself. She became, what's one of the things that she became after she recovered her left mind capabilities. She became a great artist because she continued to live in her right mind personality a great deal of the time, which is where it's this great source of creativity. That's why over and over we hear from these saints that it's the heart. Everything is based in the heart.
For those who didn't notice it, I put a link in the chat, which is to one of Jill Bolte Taylor's TED Talks. Really wonderful.
Thank you. Yes, anybody who, if you want to get motivated to read the book, go to that chat link that Cindy posted and listen to her TED Talk.
She has others, but I'm pretty sure this was the first one, and it is called My Stroke of Insight. And it's about what's in the book. There are some other ones too, though, that are really good, but it's a good starter. She's also plays guitar and sings and writes songs.
Yes, she does. And sculpts. She's a wonderful sculptor, and she does leaded glass. She does these incredible leaded glass these leaded glass windows. So She's quite a remarkable human being. We're so, as she said, whoa, look at this. I'm a neuroanatomist, able to watch myself having this stroke. What a precious thing this is.
She's
And
like,
that's how she felt about it.
cool. Let me take notes. Oh, wait, I can't.
Yeah, exactly. That's how she felt. Yeah. But she tried to remember everything that she could. Yeah. Jill Bolte Taylor. Her middle name is spelled B-O-L-T-E, Bolte. Jill Bolte Taylor. So, dear ones, until next week, when we'll start with A Breast in the Sky. All right. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. Go in Mother's loving and protective embrace. And until next time, for those of you who care to join us, there's a link on our website and through our Facebook page to the classes on Tuesday night and Wednesday night, Saturday morning and Sunday and all that stuff. But it's been such a joy to be with you here this evening. And
Yeah. Same here. Thank you. Thank you, Shankar. This was great.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank all of you.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, June.
Bye all.